David Bishop, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Mark.
We're um, we're at a nondescript time of year.
It is cold outside. There's
It
still
is it
snow
is
on the
cold.
ground.
It is
Yes, it
cold,
is.
but we
Around
were
the new year.
instructed by a friend of ours not to date this episode because it needs to live. That being said, it's great to see you, and I hope you had a great holiday.
I did. Thanks for asking. I hope you did as well.
I did. I did. Very very quiet. Now we got some great content to talk about, and this is in conjunction with a research project that Brick Meets Click has been doing for several months, and Mercatus is pleased to sponsor it as usual. David, can you just give us a brief introduction to this latest piece of insight that you and your organization have produced?
Yeah, so this is what we would consider our annual sales forecasting outlook. It's something that we were doing before COVID, but paused in 2020 simply because there was so much volatility and uncertainty. We really kept that pause on through 2021, and as we were starting to read, the ongoing trends that we monitor on a monthly basis, 2022 was definitely stabilizing, and we felt we had more confidence in being able to make projections with higher degree of confidence going forward. So we turned it back on, and this is our next go at it, looking at the next 5 years for eGrocery as well as grocery in general.
Fantastic. Uh, so let me ask you, what makes this forecast unique from other forecasts our audience may have seen?
Yeah, so I think in just kind of lay terms, I mean, we start the forecast based on what we know about the market, about and about how households are buying groceries, whether that be online or in store.
Mhm.
I mean, what I mean by that is that we're using a combination of secondary sources from nonpartisan organizations. So that would include the government or Pew Internet Research to support certain aspects of the modeling, as well as proprietary research that we've done, either conducted on behalf of Brick Meets Click as independent ongoing research, or in some cases, work that we've been commissioned to do, like with Mercatus, that can help inform some of the inputs for the model. Besides that, what makes this different or better, for lack of a better term, is that there's two components that would be unique here. One is we look at the overall market first based on the three ways households receive online orders, so pickup, delivery, and ship to home. And then secondly, within each of those segments, we're looking at the business today and projecting out through 2027 based on age cohorts for those households, as we know that age is the strongest kind of correlation with internet usage or technology usage in general. We use that as the base, and then we again inform what we're doing with a range of resources that we have, which goes beyond our monthly insights tracking to also include our sales benchmarking that Mercatus was also a sponsor of.
So, and that's a great summary. And I think what's critical for the audience to understand, and anyone who's going to be digesting the insights from the report, is that the methodology that you put into this is um, quite complicated and specific. Can you elaborate on the steps that you took to put the forecast together?
Yeah. Just a clarification, I say complex because it's a variety of steps. So if we just kind of took a linear kind of walk through the methodology at a very high level without getting into the numbers, I mean, we obviously start with some type of population measure, right? So while we can look at total population based on persons in the US today projected out, we focus on households. So we can look at the number of households today projected out through 2027, which is based on a variety of inputs, including the average household size, as well as other trends that drive the population measures leading into household, whether it's immigration, birth, and deaths. These were the core base for building the market size for total spending, regardless of whether it was online or in store. We obviously want to filter out those households that really aren't applicable when we're looking at online. Some people would look at the total addressable market. So we factor in internet usage, which, as of today, according to the Pew Research, would be right around 93% of households. So that's not to say they don't have access, it's whether they use it. And then we look at how that's projected to change based on the kind of the historical growth rates at those age cohort levels. So we would anticipate by 2027, the percentage of households that use the internet would rise from 93% today to 97% in 2027. That's not enough for us. Pickup and delivery requires you not only to have access and use the internet, but have access to a pickup or delivery service. Today, delivery is essentially available in virtually every household. And that just simply means if a household in the US wanted to shop online for groceries or delivery to home, they could find at least one service within their trade area to use that. Whether that's the one that they would want, that's debatable. But when it comes to pickup, we haven't yet reached that level. We're still probably around 95, 97% today. And by 2027, every household that has interest in shopping online, who does use internet, would have access to at least one pickup. So that's going to play a factor for the total addressable market or the serviceable market. We then look at the usage by those three segments: pickup, delivery, and ship to home. And we start with what we know today, and we make projections based on various customer rates, whether it's acquisition and retention rates. We factor those in. And those rates also affect the other two main inputs, order frequency and average order value, because as we bring more new customers in, it has somewhat of a deflationary effect on those two variables, order frequency and AOV, as those customers are learning and becoming more familiar with it. So those, mechanisms are all used to inform how we move forward. And at the same time, we do include other external factors like inflation, just to help people put it in context to what we are seeing today in terms of spending trends.
Great. And that's a really good insight into the model that you applied. Are there any assumptions that readers of this research should consider at the same time?
Yeah, so I think if probably the most important assumptions to call out would be what we would consider the gray swan events. These may be possible and known events that, if they happen, will have potentially extensive or significant impact on the business. But at the same time, they're very unlikely to happen during the time period. So what are those, and why is that important? Well, it's important because other people may be assuming, well, they're going to happen. So in other words, we're saying that these events that we're characterizing as gray swans are not incorporated into our model because we believe it has a very low probability of happening, even though if they do happen, they have a very significant impact. So first and foremost, autonomous delivery vehicles. We know that we're seeing a range of testing primarily in Arizona and Texas, some in California, but we're still at the very early stages. And whether it's truly autonomous or driver assisted with a follow-on car or remote, that technology still has years to go before we really see mass adoption of that at a level that's going to have a material impact on the projections. That's important because delivery has a higher cost to serve than pickup. So that becomes somewhat of a drag on the economics of making delivery more appealing from an economic standpoint. I think the second is a change in classification with the gig worker. This is big because so many of the businesses today are dependent on that gig worker, especially delivery. And if there was a change, and we are seeing changes primarily at the state level right now, that could have a kind of a braking effect on the growth of the areas that are more dependent on that. So in this case, if we did see a broader rollout of reclassifications across the U.S., it could have a material impact on how retailers pursue their online strategies, primarily around delivery. And it could also motivate and accelerate the bringing back of some of these components in-house. A third area would be, the broader adoption and expansion of micro-fulfillment centers.
Right.
While it's true, we are seeing micro-fulfillment grow in certain segments. It's primarily reserved to just a handful of retailers. I mean, we know H-E-B has rolled out 5 or 6 in their market, but their strategy, their omni-channel strategy is very unique today from others. And we know Walmart is kind of doubling down on that, but they're still at the very early stages of any implementation of a broader MSC strategy. So, that's important because that does improve pick and pack productivities, as you know, Mark. But fundamental to that, and one of the realities that we know other retailers will face is it's the volume requirements used to justify the throughput to make those returns pay back. I think the last one is an extensive or an extreme economic downturn that is deep and lasting. We don't include that here. We have some economic weights in here, primarily with inflation, but we do not include any expected dramatic drop due to economic uncertainty that's likely to happen in the second half of 2023.
So whether there's a recession or not, and how deep that recession is.
Right. I mean, we've looked at the numbers before. Obviously, we know that in that context, we would expect that the lower income households would be first and most dramatically impacted. Again, our model's really based in around the age of the household cohorts as opposed to the income, although we do track the income. But again, that's a gray swan. We just don't know. We know there's a higher probability of a recession, but that doesn't tell us the duration or the severity. And we're not trying to call the market. So that's probably the fourth assumption that is relevant for forecasting purposes.
Right, David, perfect. I mean, you've really set the table well. I think in our part 2 to this conversation, we're going to get a little further into the insights that are relevant to the audience, and we look forward to having that conversation very soon. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I appreciate having the opportunity to share some perspective on the topic.